Welcome friends to a versus battle between the Lexus IS350 and the GS350. The model years are going to be between 2013 and 2020 for the GS and 2014 and 2020 for the IS. And I am comparing the 350 models here primarily. And I'll discuss why throughout this review. But this is a common question that I get asked all the time, so let's cover some of the spec sheet differences first, like the sizing, the interior space, and a few other specs as well. Okay, I have the official Lexus specs pulled up here for you. The wheelbase on the GS is about 2 inches longer compared to the IS350, and it's about 7 inches longer in total. Okay, both of these vehicles should easily fit inside of a garage. Once again, the GS, it's about an inch wider than the IS, and the height is also about an inch more than the IS. Now, ground clearance, it's 5.7 inches. And let's see what it is on the IS. It's a little bit less. It's only 5.3 to 5.1. And that's still not bad for what this is. But having that 5.7 inch ground clearance will make it even easier to clear certain speed bumps, things of that nature. But it is the interior space that I think most people are going to be interested in. The IS actually has 0.2 inches more headroom in the front compared to the GS, which is crazy. But get this, the legroom is also about a little over 2 inches in the front compared to the GS. So if you're a taller individual and you're not really chauffeuring anybody around, surprisingly enough, you will have more space sitting in the front of an IS compared to a GS. When it comes to the rear legroom, that's where the GS really shines. You get 4 inches more legroom in the back compared to the IS. Now that is certainly a difference. And if you care about the comfort of rear passengers, then absolutely go with the GS. You also get slightly more shoulder room and hip room in the GS compared to the IS, and the trunk space is also a little bit larger as well at 14.3 cubic feet compared to 13.8 on the IS. Curb weight, once again, I'm comparing the 350 models, and the GS 350 weighs in at 3,795 pounds on the rear wheel drive, and a rear-wheel drive IS 350 is about 200 pounds lighter. Weight distribution is slightly better with the GS. Another interesting thing to note, the GS has a slightly better coefficient of drag at 0.27 versus 0.28 on the IS. Okay, and also the fuel economy, apparently on the rear-wheel drive models, the GS gets 1 mpg better out on the highway versus the IS 350. Again, I think that has a lot to do with the 8-speed automatic that they started to use in the 2014 model years and up. The 2013 model years of the GS, you may have noticed that they are cheaper in the used car market. That's also because in 2013, the rear-wheel drive GS used a 6-speed automatic transmission and not the 8-speed automatic that the 2014s use. So if you're shopping for a GS, ideally go with the 2014 and up. But if you can't find it, like I mentioned before, I don't mind the 6-speed or the 8-speed. I think they're both fine for these vehicles. And the fuel tank size is exactly the same at 17.4 gallons. So those are the main specs I want to cover. And again, I was comparing the 2014 model years of both vehicles, since I'm assuming most people interested in purchasing these vehicles, they're going to go way back into the archives so they can get the cheapest vehicle possible, right? I'm assuming most people don't want to pay up for a 2020, so that's why I chose these two model years. Now the 350 models are definitely the way to go because the engine just feels so much better than the 250s. I mean, I drove an IS 250 and it felt like a dog. I mean, it was so slow. It's cool that it's still a V6, but trust me, if you're spending the money anyway, you might as well just upgrade to the 350 and get a model that actually befits a luxury car driving experience. The 350 models, they sound amazing with the sound tube that Lexus has installed in these vehicles. That induction noise is amazing. One of the most charismatic V6 experiences that you can ever get in a vehicle. So that's one big trade-off right there. Okay, you're literally sacrificing one of the greatest V6s for a compromised one. Also with the IS250 models, these engines are direct injection only, as you can see by this spec sheet right here, according to Lexus. And that means once you get it up to 80,000 miles or so, every 80,000 miles, you're pretty much going to be running into carbon buildup issues, and that's going to cost you some extra money to help clean that off. Whereas with the 350 models, the 2GR FSE motors, they also have port injection as well. So that means it kind of helps to clean off the carbon buildup, so you don't have to worry about cleaning off anything, even with higher mileage versions of the 350s. And it's producing 306 horsepower, 277 pounds-feet of torque. Premium fuel is required on literally all of these engines, but literally nobody puts premium fuel into these vehicles. And it's one reason why I hate buying used cars, because people never take care of their vehicles. They're always being petty and cheaping out wherever they can. So I've noticed with some of these older Lexus models, some of these engines, even if you buy a 350, certain engines feel like a dog. They don't pull very well, and I'm assuming it's because that's a model where a previous owner probably used regular fuel throughout the entire life of the engine. That's what I'm assuming. Make sure you do a thorough test drive of these vehicles, okay? But moving on, the rear-wheel drive models got an 8-speed transmission. All-wheel drive models got a 6-speed. Assuming we're talking about the 350 models. And honestly, I don't have an issue with either transmission. I think they're both fine, but obviously going with that 8-speed would be better still. You get slightly better fuel economy. And okay, we got double wishbones in the front, multi-link in the rear, the exact same suspension geometry, pretty much the same size brakes with both the IS and the GS. 0 to 60 around 5.6, 5.7 seconds. Once again for the 350s, and I'll just put the rest of this here and you can read this for yourself, screenshot it, do whatever you want, because I do have to move on and talk about the pricing of these two vehicles used. So I'll just kind of quickly go over this again, read up on this in your own time. There is some very good information here. Once again, this is the official Lexus spec sheet for both cars. Apparently you get a little bit more standard safety features on the GS compared to the IS, if you care about that. The bass audio system is better on the GS. You get a 12 speaker versus, what was it, 7 speakers? Yeah, 7 speakers, no, 8 speakers on the IS, the bass audio system. But we move down here, talk about the factory options. The Mark Levinson, which is definitely a must with these Lexus products. It is one of the best sounding audio systems that you can ever ask for in a modern day automobile. You get a 15 speaker unit with the IS, but you get a 17 speaker in the GS. So if you love your music, that's another reason why you should consider the GS. You get a little bit more speakers, but also the larger interior space means that the vehicle can make better use of the Mark Levinson audio. All right, so once again, good information here. You can see what these vehicles came with certain options and trim levels. And we got the F-Sport information right here with both the GS and the IS. You can see what each of these vehicles sort of come with. All right, enough of that. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the pricing now. And I've already filtered out all the clapped out vehicles here. Okay, go down here on Car Gurus, you can filter out all of the accident vehicles, the frame damage, the salvage title, all that nasty stuff. You know, under 100,000 miles. I just put that there in 2013 to 2020. It's a nationwide search. I'm doing this video June 7th of 2023. Okay, obviously, post-pandemic, you know, the prices of these cars are asinine. The lowest priced GS with the filters that I have here seems to be around $21,000, okay? Now, come over here to the IS, same filters. I even filtered out the IS250, so we're only looking at the V6 models, all right? Once again, 2014 to 2023, I guess. Lowest price also seems to be around $21,000 for the IS, but a lot of these seem to be the all-wheel drive IS 300, which is a detuned version of the 3.5 liter V6, basically. So it makes a little bit less horsepower. Honestly, if you need all-wheel drive, I would rather just go with the GS 350 all-wheel drive because that's not detuned at all. So all things considered, if we're not gonna look at the 300 and we're gonna compare 350 to 350 prices, the GS is actually a little bit cheaper, I feel like. And it helps that the GS goes back to the 2013 model year, as opposed to the IS, which 2014 is the earliest model year of that generation. So that helps to make the GS a little bit cheaper. And another thing, most people don't really appreciate how well these vehicles drive. In fact, most people don't appreciate this brand at all. They think all of these cars suck to drive, and that's quite frankly not the case. I actually did a versus battle between, I think it was like a 2015 GS versus a 2016 Porsche Panamera with the V6. I kid you not, the GS, it wasn't even an F-Sport model. Both of those cars, the Porsche and the GS 350, drove essentially identical to one another. The Porsche had slightly higher limits to it, but really it doesn't matter on everyday roads. The point is the two cars felt very much identical to each other. The very same mannerisms, kind of steering weight, suspension feel, all of it was almost identical, and both engines pretty much pulled the same as well. The main problem is a lot of people, they put down the Lexus products and then they hype up or put the Porsches, the BMWs, etc. on a pedestal. So that helps in your favor actually when you're shopping for these vehicles. That's why I'm so high on the GS. You're getting a very high quality driving experience. And this is a slightly better vehicle to drive than the IS. The IS, the RC, and the GS, they all feel pretty much the same. The GS is just a smidge quieter and a smidge smoother in terms of ride quality, but that's about it. And you don't need to get the F-Sport version of the GS, but if you're shopping for the IS, I would recommend going with the F-Sport. I did notice a much larger difference, but all things considered, get the GS if you want all-wheel drive, or in general, between these two vehicles, I just think the GS is the better value. And only get the V6 models. Don't play with this 200T nonsense. Okay, that engine sucks. I don't like the turbo 4-cylinder. It is not a good engine. 350 model, or don't get it at all. Now, some issues that you might want to keep in mind with the GS or the IS models. With the GS, apparently people are having issues with the fuel pump, but that was actually something that Lexus had a recall for. I remember a gentleman commented on one of my videos saying that he had to replace the fuel pump on his GS and it cost him a lot of money, and he did it himself. But I believe if he just took it to a dealership, they should have covered it under a recall. So I don't know what's up with that. But fuel pump seems to be an issue, and you know, there's this guy on Club Lexus here. He's just having some stupid knickknacks apparently going wrong with his GS 350. And mind you, this is a beautiful car that this person has. Okay, it's an F-Sport model, great color, nice wheels. This is a very nice looking vehicle. Okay, let's see some of the issues that he had. He had an issue on the freeway, bad steering rack from Lexus. And let's see here, keeps hearing clunks when going over potholes. These are some of the main issues a lot of people have with Lexus cars, used ones anyway. Steering issues, and also random suspension noises, clicking sounds, especially from the rear, I believe on the IS models. That's something. And the stopping power was there, but you're going to be going through brakes quite a bit, especially with the F-Sport models, which that's fine. Brakes are not a big deal. But you're also going to be going through tires quite a bit when you go with the all-wheel drive versions of the IS 300, whatever, and the GS 350. Some people have some interior creaks and rattles, things of that nature. But the main thing is suspension, components, steering issues. I would say that's the main problem with these older Lexus vehicles. The guy with the GS, his vehicle is out of warranty. Of course it is, because these are literally 10-year-old cars now at this point. And his main complaint is, if it's not one thing, it's another. And that's how I feel about most used cars as well. If it's not causing issues, it needs maintenance, right? Oil changes, tires, whatever. That's my problem with these old, clapped out used cars, okay? 10-year-old, 100,000 miles. And you saw the prices of these cars. I mean, $23,000 for a 100,000 mile vehicle is not cool. You know what I mean? And that was the next video I was gonna make. Is it even worth buying these cars, or should you just get like a brand new Corolla or something? The main problem with the pandemic prices is these vehicles are now older and they have more mileage, and they go for the same price or more actually than what they did pre-pandemic. That's the main problem with all of these used vehicles and all of these used prices. These things are 10 years old with all of these miles on it. But yeah, you have to ask yourself, is it worth buying these vehicles out of warranty with all these miles and, the random issues that could pop up? It could cost people a lot of money. After all, some of these things can cost upwards of really over $1,000, and almost 70% of America does not have $1,000 in a savings account. So this can literally cripple some people buying these used luxury cars out of a warranty. Sure, it's dependable. Sure, it's not going to leave you stranded on the side of the road, but you're paying all this money and it's not cool hearing clicks and rattles throughout the vehicle. But if you have to have a used vehicle, GS is definitely the way to go. If you can get 2014 or 2015 and up, that would be great. I'm assuming those vehicles will be a little bit more ironed out, but let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you're an owner of either one of these vehicles, GS, IS. Let us know how it's been holding up for you, and if you've had any issues with your particular car, I would like to hear it down below. But thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.